What is your, my faith in humanity has been restored, story? 1. I left my phone on the roof of my car whilst wrestling my screaming toddler into her car seat. Someone saw me drive off, followed and picked up my phone when it fell off at the first corner. She then followed me home to give it back, in the same village, so not far at all, luckily. 2. My husband left an expensive bicycle component on top of his car in a tiny rural car park in the middle of nowhere. Of course it fell off when he drove off. As he needed to replace the component, he was browsing on eBay when he found one for sale, and in the description the seller said they'd found it in the middle of nowhere in the same town. My husband messaged them, was able to describe exactly where he'd lost it, and the seller posted it to him for free. 3. My sister-in-law flew into airport and managed to leave her laptop bag hanging from the luggage trolley when I collected her. She realized once we got home. We went back to the airport, and it was sitting waiting for her at lost property. 4. As a student in Leeds, we were burgled. Police came and, after doing their initial work-related stuff, they stayed and helped us tidy up the entire house as it had been completely ransacked. They made us coffees and really just made us feel like they honestly cared. A week later they came back to see how we were and were just amazing. A few months later, they'd actually recovered all of our stolen stuff. 5. I blacked out my second night in Dublin after drinking too much homemade booze. Woke up on a stairwell in some random tower block with all my possessions, including my wallet with a lot of money in it, missing. A few days later an envelope arrived in the post with all my possessions intact. All that was on the envelope was, from Ocean. 6. I was on my way home. I'm in the middle lane and all of a sudden my bike cuts out. No power, no electrics. Nothing. I managed to veer to the left lane and squeeze up to the barrier as close as I could. A trucker slowed behind me, put his hazards on and stayed there while I struggled to get into neutral. He remained as a barrier, crawling behind me as I wheeled my bike to the closest emergency refuge. I waved a thanks but wish he knew how much I appreciated his help. 7. A few years ago I was out with my child in the pushchair. It was below zero and they were wrapped up well. A car stopped to check if I needed a lift. We were out in the middle of nowhere. Then wanted to know where my hat was, and the driver started to give me their hat before I could prove I was in possession of a hat. Mollified, they tried to get me into the car once more before leaving me to my walk. 8. 30 years ago I worked in a town center pub. One night it was snowing heavily and we shut early, so I ran across town for the last bus. Got there to see the driver shut the door in my face and drive off. Managed to catch a later bus to the nearest village but still had a 2 to 3 mile walk. Luckily I'd got about half a mile and was starting to get very cold when someone pulled up and offered me a lift the rest of the way. Thank you, kind stranger. 9. I was once trying to get home after being at work for a horrible, long shift. I was trying to use my phone to pay for a bus but it just would not work. I was almost in tears because it was about an hour's walk home otherwise and I was just exhausted. Lovely man about my age pays for my bus fare, and then gives me another couple of quid in case I needed another bus later on, which I did. He absolutely saved my day. I think about him all the time. 10. Took the dog for a walk last week and 3 hours later somebody drops by my house and gives me back my wallet that I'd dropped with all of my bank cards and ID. I was so grateful. What's the story that restored your faith in humanity? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like for more content.